let's just jump right in, because today we are looking at the breathtaking conclusion of this incredible explainer, the story of the eagle who refused to fly. It's a huge reminder that, yeah, you were born to fly. So if you've been following along, we are picking right back up with Aiden at the exact moment he finally pulls off the impossible. All that shame, the hiding, the fear, completely gone. He has literally made the sky his home. You can just feel the sheer joy and victorious energy here. So let's see how this whole transformation unfolds.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just look at this phrase. The sky was no longer a dream. It was home. Every single morning, Aiden is up there, soaring above the mountains. I mean, he's basically dancing with the wind, gliding right through the clouds, totally free. And when you think about the wings he used to tuck away, the ones he literally hid in the dirt out of absolute shame, those exact same wings are now his greatest strength. It's wild.
And honestly, here is the realization that hits him with every single flight, and it is so profound. Nothing changed about his physical wings, like not a single feather. The wings dragging in the dirt were the exact same wings he's now using to touch the clouds. The only thing that changed was what he believed about them. It was 100% an internal shift. His belief was literally the only thing standing between him on the ground and him in the sky.
So one afternoon, Aiden is gliding way up high, and he passes over a super familiar sight. Yep, the old farmhouse. And from way up there, he looks down and sees the chickens. They're still just pecking at the dirt, doing the exact same routine in that same tiny yard, behind the exact same fence that used to look like the boundary of the entire universe to him. And he just smiles. Not in an arrogant, I'm better than you way, but just remembering the bird he used to be. Or, well, the bird he thought he was.
So Aiden decides to just gently land near the farm. And you can probably picture this. The chickens are staring at him in absolute disbelief. They barely even recognize him now in all his majesty. But then this one young chick steps forward, wide eyes, full of innocent curiosity, right? And he looks up at Aiden and asks in this tiny voice, "Are you an eagle?" Aiden just gives a gentle smile and says, "Yes." Then the chick looks all the way up at the massive sky and asks, "Is it really as beautiful as it looks?" And Aiden doesn't just rush an answer. He turns, looks out at the towering mountains in the distance, really taking in this vast world that he now calls home. And quietly, with just this massive sense of wonder, he tells the chick, "It's even more beautiful than I ever imagined." At that, the little chick lowers his head, kind of sad, and whispers, "I wish I could fly like you." And this brilliantly illustrates the core message we are unpacking today. Aiden replies, super gently, "Maybe not with wings, but every living creature has something it was created to do." And he explains that the real tragedy is that most of us never discover what that is. Why? Simply because we spend our entire lives trying to become someone else. We deny our own purpose just to fit into someone else's mold. The contrast here is just staggering. Aiden's words spread across the farm, and what do the chickens do? They react with pure fear. They literally laugh at him, squawking, "Don't listen to him. Dreams only lead to disappointment. Stay where it's safe." I mean, look at the divide between these two mindsets. On one side, you have this fear-based existence clinging to safety, avoiding disappointment at all costs. And on the other, you have Aiden's profound wisdom about actually honoring your true purpose.
But notice what Aiden does next. He doesn't argue with them. He doesn't try to debate or prove them wrong. Because he learned a crucial lesson, and it's perfectly captured right here. You cannot force someone to see the sky if they have already decided to live with their eyes permanently fixed on the ground. You just can't grant vision to someone who is willfully choosing to look down.
So, seasons pass, and word of Aiden starts to spread. Soon enough, other eagles start finding him. These were young eagles who had completely lost their confidence. Some honestly believed they were too weak to fly. Some thought they were way too old to start. Others were totally convinced they'd missed their chance, like the window had closed forever. And Aiden? He just listened to every single one of their stories. Then, he took each of them up to the exact same mountain, to the very cliff where his own life changed. But he never pushed them off that cliff. He never forced them to fly. He'd just stand beside them, look them right in the eye, and ask one single piercing question. Whose voice are you living by? And some of them would just stand there in complete silence. Others would just break down and cry. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the realization that followed those tears. For the very first time in their lives, these eagles realized that the limits controlling them, these invisible walls keeping them grounded, never actually belonged to them in the first place. They were carrying the weight of things that weren't even theirs. Those limits belonged to fear, They belonged to doubt. They belonged to the opinions of other people. They were basically living by someone else's script. As the years rolled on, Aiden became a literal legend. They started calling him the Guardian of the Mountains. Travelers going through the peaks would see this majestic eagle soaring way up high. Parents would tell their kids stories about him around the campfire. And the really beautiful part, he wasn't famous for being the strongest eagle or the fastest or the most fierce. He was a legend because he spent his life reminding others of what was possible for them. Then, one beautiful spring morning, an old eagle lands right beside Aiden. It was his mentor, the same wise eagle who changed his life all those years ago. His feathers were almost entirely white now. His flight was noticeably slower, but his eyes, they still had that exact same sharp, clear wisdom. The old eagle smiles and says, "You've flown farther than I ever imagined." And Aiden just humbly bows his head and replies, "Only because you reminded me who I was." But the mentor gently shakes his head, offering this one final super profound correction. He says, "No, I didn't give you wings. I simply reminded you they were already there." I mean, what a powerful statement, right? The mentor takes zero credit. The potential, the strength, the ability to soar, that was all completely inside Aiden from the very beginning. Then, the old eagle looks out toward the horizon. The sun is setting, casting this brilliant golden light all over the mountains. He turns to Aiden and says, "Promise me one thing. When you meet someone who has forgotten who they are, don't criticize them. Don't laugh at them. Don't tell them they're weak. Simply remind them they were born to fly." Aiden nods, making the promise. The old eagle smiles one last time, spreads his wings, and disappears forever beyond the clouds. So, the crucial point is, how does this actually apply to us? The reality is, so many people spend their entire lives living way, way below their actual potential. And notice this, it's not from a lack of talent. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's not even a lack of opportunity. It's because, at some point along the way, they accepted an identity that was never truly theirs to begin with. Let's look at exactly how this happens. This builds into what the story calls invisible chains. Maybe someone once told you, "Hey, you're not smart enough," or "You're way too old for that," or even "You're too young, you don't have the experience," or the absolute worst one, "People like you never succeed." When you hear those words and you repeat them to yourself long enough, day after day, they harden. They literally become invisible chains that hold you to the ground just as effectively as solid iron. But here is the fundamental truth you've got to take away from this explainer today. An eagle remains an eagle, even if it spends its entire life growing up in a chicken coop. Yes, your environment can absolutely shape your thinking. It totally influences your habits and your fears. But it can never, ever change your true nature. The actual blueprint of who you are, that remains completely intact. And that exact same rule applies to you. You are not defined by your past, you're definitely not defined by the opinions of others, and you are sure as heck not defined by your past failures. You are defined entirely by the choices you make today. The very moment you decide to stop listening to fear, and you begin actually trusting the gifts you've been given, man, that is the moment your entire life begins to change. So before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this question, and I want you to ask yourself right now, honestly, what part of your life have you been living like a chicken even though you were born to fly? Seriously, think about it. Maybe it's a dream you've just buried. Maybe it's a purpose you've been too scared to pursue. Or maybe it's simply a voice inside you that you have actively ignored for years. Whatever that thing is for you, today is your chance to spread your wings. Because the sky was never closed to you. You simply forgot that it was always yours to claim. If this explainer inspired you, please make sure to subscribe to Tales with Wisdom so we can keep bringing you these powerful insights. And always remember, you are never born to live in fear. You were born to fly.